Let the record stand. Senior diplomat Vaxos cleared his throat, his trembling claws adjusting the heavy folds of his ceremonial robes before the council's shimmering recording crystals. I, Vaxos, proud voice of the Centauri Diplomatic Corps, swear this testimony is given freely, with the weight of knowing it might be my final act. Can you feel the shift in the air? The council chambers, once a beacon of hope with their towering crystal spires gleaming like stars, now loom with shadows, long, dark, accusing fingers stretching across the empty seats. Vaxos' scaled hand grazed the obsidian podium, its surface worn smooth by time, and his mind drifted to the countless moments he'd seen humans stand right here, smiling, always smiling. Through every snide interruption, every dismissive wave, they stood unshaken, their polite grins unshakable. How could we have been so blind? We called them patient, Vaxos said, his voice cracking, his secondary breathing passages wheezing. Was it a laugh? A sob? No, that's not quite right. We called them pets. Can you believe it? Amusing little creatures, we thought, who'd somehow bumbled their way into faster-than-light travel. When they smiled and nodded through our smug condescension, we mistook their restraint for surrender. When they quietly accepted our so-called amendments to their trade agreements, we smirked and labeled them simple. When they dared to calmly protest our violations of their sovereignty, we saw nothing but weakness. Weakness? How could we have been so foolish? A distant explosion shook the chamber's windows, a low rumble echoing through the crystal walls. Vaxos didn't flinch. Oh, the defense systems would hold, at least for now. I can still see Ambassador Rodriguez standing right here, he said, his claw tapping the podium's worn center. 6 months ago, she stood tall, warning us we were pushing too far. Her words, those fascinating human phrases, the straw that breaks the camel's back, the patience of saints. Saints. We chuckled behind our claws, didn't we? Far too refined to laugh openly at our pets. How sophisticated we thought ourselves. Another explosion, closer now, made the recording crystals flicker, their glow wavering but stubborn. The humans have this saying, Vaxos continued, his voice heavy with regret. Assumption is the mother of all mistakes. Isn't that funny? They tried to warn us, over and over, but we assumed their patience was endless. We assumed their technology was as meek as their diplomatic smiles. We assumed their military was as feeble as it seemed. He straightened, his spine rigid, all four eyes locking onto the central crystal with fierce intensity. To any species who hears this in the future, listen closely. Learn from our catastrophic mistake. The humans weren't patient because they were weak. No, they were patient because they were strong enough to afford patience. They smiled through our insults because they knew. They knew exactly what they were capable of, while we preened and patted ourselves on the back for our imagined superiority. They watched. They waited. They built. And we were clueless. The chamber's emergency lights flared red, bathing Vaxos' scaled face in a dramatic, almost theatrical glow. When human children died aboard the Star Dreamer, that legendary patience of theirs, it shattered. Oh, how it shattered. And now we finally understand. What we mistook for the collar of a pet was a leash, and we were the ones being held back from a fall so steep it would have crushed us. A shrill proximity alarm wailed, cutting through the air. Vaxos closed his secondary eyes, a gesture of weary resignation, but his primary eyes stayed fixed on the crystal. This is the full account of how the Galactic Council learned a brutal truth. Patience, true patience, isn't weakness. It's the luxury of the powerful. And we were never as powerful as we thought. Not even close. The decline in our relations with humanity, Vaxos went on, his voice thick with sorrow, can be traced to 3 specific moments. Looking back, each one feels like watching someone gleefully build their own funeral pyre, thinking it's a joyride. He summoned the first holorecord, the council chambers flickering to life during the Mining Rights Conference. The Proxima Centauri incident, he said, his tone bitter. Council President Xenotol, can you imagine, declared human mining claims invalid over what she called clerical oversights. Clerical oversights. For colonies, 10,000 human miners. All their equipment, their livelihoods, gone. Stripped away with a single thumbprint. How could we have been so callous? The holo showed Ambassador Kira Rodriguez at the podium, her dark hair streaked with silver, her hands clasped calmly behind her back like she was holding back a storm. Honorable Council, her voice rang out, clear and unshaken. These colonies have operated legally for 15 years. Our documentation is complete. This appears to be a unilateral decision made without proper. But Xenotol cut her off, her mandibles clicking with what Vaxos now saw as naked greed. The forms, she'd snapped, were filed in human standard dates, not galactic standard. A tragic oversight. The Mox Saturn Mining Consortium has already been granted replacement rights. Replacement rights. Rodriguez didn't falter. She nodded, her fingers dancing across her data pad, and said, "The Human Federation notes this decision. We trust the Council keeps meticulous records of all such administrative adjustments." Oh, that calm, that precision. Why didn't we see the warning in it? The second incident, Vaxos shifted, his discomfort plane, came just 3 months later. The Council's Transportation Authority, without warning, without discussion, reclassified 6 major trade routes through human space as highly restricted military corridors. 50 years of established trade lanes vanished. The holo shifted, showing Trade Commissioner Baxner, his smugness practically dripping as he informed the human delegation their merchant vessels would now need to file new flight plans through Mox Saturn space. At 17 times the cost. 17 times. Rodriguez, somehow, kept that same composed smile, like a mask carved from steel. "The Human Federation notes this decision as well," she said, her voice steady. "Though we wonder if the Council has considered the full implications." Implications? The human delegate will refrain from questioning Council security decisions. Baxner had barked, slamming the matter shut. "This matter is closed." Closed? Oh, how wrong he was. But the third incident, Vaxos's voice dropped to a near whisper, heavy with dread. That's when we should have seen it. Really seen it. The Terraform Approval Board denied expansion rights to 3 human colonies buckling under overpopulation. Meanwhile, they fast-tracked approval for Mox Saturn luxury resorts, on 12 worlds bordering human space. The holo showed Rodriguez again, standing at the podium, but this time, Vaxos had caught it. Something in her eyes. Something that should have sent us running. "The Human Federation," she'd said, that diplomatic smile still fixed, "notes this decision as well, and we want to ensure the Council's records are absolutely clear on the sequence of events and decisions leading to this point." Clear. "The human delegate will not make threats," Xenotol had sneered, her voice dripping with scorn. "Threats?" Rodriguez's laugh was like crystal chimes, beautiful and deadly. "I'm simply doing my job, ensuring accurate record-keeping. After all, we wouldn't want any clerical oversights when the time comes to review these decisions." Review. Why didn't we hear the warning in that word? Vaxos paused the holo, zooming in on Rodriguez's face, her eyes burning with a quiet fire. Look at her eyes, really look. That's not submission. That's not patience. That's a predator, counting heartbeats until the strike. A hunter biding its time. He waved the holo away, his scales rippling with shame. But we didn't see it. The Mox Saturn representatives, can you believe their arrogance? Laughed. Called her the well-trained human right to her face. And she just smiled that smile, kept taking notes. "We thought we were watching a species too weak to stand up for itself," Vaxos confessed, his voice breaking. "Instead, we were watching a species giving us chance after chance to step back from the edge. Chance after chance. Why were we so blind?" Ambassador Rodriguez wasn't jotting down notes for some dusty human archive, he said, his voice rising with realization. She was documenting, building a case, creating what humans call a paper trail of our own stupidity, our arrogance. Another explosion rocked the chambers, closer now, the walls trembling. 3 incidents, 3 chances to see what we were dealing with, but we were too busy congratulating ourselves. Too busy gloating over our clever manipulation of the simple humans, patting ourselves on the back while they smiled and took notes. Notes. Every word, every slight, every injustice, recorded. Vaxos's claw touched the podium again, right where Rodriguez had always rested her hand, her steady, unyielding hand. The truly remarkable thing? They gave us more chances after this. So many opportunities to pull back, to rethink our actions. The humans have a saying about having the patience of a saint. A saint. We should have asked ourselves, what kind of strength does it take to hold that kind of patience? And what happens when it finally runs out? What happens when you push a saint too far? The Star Dreamer. Vaxos's voice broke on the name, his claws trembling as he spoke. That's what broke it. That's what shattered the glass. The Star Dreamer. A civilian research vessel, a silver needle gleaming against the black velvet of space, carrying 27 humans, 8 of them children. Children. Part of their young explorers program. All lost. All gone. He pulled up the hollow, the mock Saturn patrol ships closing in, the transmission logs crackling. Mock Saturn patrol, this is Star Dreamer. We're a civilian research vessel studying quantum fields, the human captain had said, his voice calm, professional. You are in restricted space. Power down and prepare for inspection. There must be a mistake, the captain replied. We're well within the approved research corridor. We have children aboard, conducting their first deep space. The weapons fire cut him off. Silence. Deafening silence. And we, Vaxos whispered, we sat in these chambers and called it an unfortunate incident. Navigational error. Can you imagine the gall? The hollow shifted, showing Commander Blake Chin bursting into the chamber, not through the doors, but through the wall. The explosion startled everyone. Everyone except Rodriguez, who didn't even blink. You're out of order. Xenital shrieked, her voice shrill. Guards. But Chun strode to the podium, his dress uniform pristine despite the debris, his presence like a storm trapped in human form. The guards froze. Was it his eyes? The way he moved? Play the footage, he said, his voice quiet but unyielding. You will leave this chamber immediately, Xenital began. Play the footage. And they did. Oh, they did. Because that voice, it stripped away eons of civilization, awakening something primal, something that remembered what it was to be prey. The Star Dreamer's recreation deck filled the chamber's screens. Children floating in zero gravity, laughing, scribbling notes on crystal formation, joking about space food, singing an old human song about a Major Tom. Then the impact, the lights failing, the screams. These children, Chin's voice could have frozen stars, were writing thank you notes to the council for allowing their research trip. Thanking you, while your ships powered up their weapons. He held up a handwritten note, fragile and real. This is from Amy Chun, my daughter, age 12. Her last words, as your ships closed in. Thank you for letting us see the stars. Stars. Can you feel the weight of that? The chamber fell silent, heavy as a dying sun. You called this an unfortunate incident, Chin said, each word a hammer blow. Said they shouldn't have been there. Said their deaths were regrettable, but their own fault. He placed Amy's note on the podium, gentle but devastating. Let me be clear, crystal clear. This note, these children, they were the last of humanity's patience. The final line. You treated our diplomacy as weakness, our restraint as fear, our patience as submission. That ends today. Rodriguez stood, joining him, her diplomatic smile gone. Gone. The Human Federation doesn't just note this incident, she said, her voice making the room flinch. We remember. Oh, we remember. That moment went viral across the galaxy. 100 species watched humanity's patience snap. 100 species realized they'd never seen humanity angry. We should have remembered Earth's oceans, Vaxos muttered, his voice low. Their deepest predators don't rush, don't snap at every target. They're patient because nothing hunts them. Nothing threatens them. The human fleet was closing in now, the emergency displays flashing. We thought we were watching sheep among wolves. Sheep. We were watching dragons pretending to be sheep, waiting until we dared threaten their young. When the human ships moved, the council laughed. Laughed. Called it a tantrum. Counselor Nastel sneered. Let them burn fuel with their outdated ships. It'll help their emotional outburst. The Hollow showed 300 human vessels. Old designs, nothing to fear. Then Admiral Mira Patel's transmission hit every channel, her bronze face framed by a stark white uniform. This is Fleet Admiral Mira Patel, Human Federation Navy. For 50 years, we've followed the paperclip protocol. Show your enemies a paperclip, keep the nuclear weapons hidden. Every ship you've seen, outdated on purpose. Every weapon, basic by design. Every technology, chosen to seem primitive. The council's disbelief roared, but Patel's voice sliced through. The Star Dreamer carried our children. They died thanking their killers. We're done pretending. The human ships changed. They shimmered, shedding their old forms like snakeskin, revealing sleek, deadly vessels bristling with impossible weapons. Quantum shell disruption, Vaxos whispered. That broke Nastel. The Mox-Saturn fleet, 10,000 ships, moved to intercept. Patel's voice returned. This demonstration shows 3 technologies. Watch closely. A single human ship fired, and space hiccuped. 20 Mox-Saturn ships vanished, their atoms scattered. Space-time incursion weapons. Vaxos gasped. They'd had them for decades. The second demonstration, 3 human ships sculpted gravity, twisting Mox-Saturn vessels into grotesque shapes. The third, a single ship shut down quantum coherence, turning 60 ships into atomic soup. Nastel screamed, "Stop! Please!" Patel's face reappeared. "Now you say please? We have 30,000 more ships, waiting, hoping we'd never need them." The battle lasted 6 minutes. The restructuring took 6 days. Humanity demanded accountability, not vengeance. Every council session now begins with a moment of silence for the Star Dreamer's children. Decisions must pass this Star Dreamer test. Does it protect the innocent? Serve the many? Could it be written in a child's thank you note? The human fleet waited, patient again. Vaxos shuddered, learning humanity had doctored their history, hiding their strength. The Mox-Saturn delegation fled to the galaxy's edge. Human ships were already there, watching. True power, Vaxos said, is the ability to destroy but choosing not to. Humanity chose patience, kindness, forgiveness, but never forgetfulness. As the chambers faced demolition, Admiral Patel's voice counted down, polite to the end. Vaxos walked to safety, whispering thanks to humanity for teaching wisdom before fear. The Star Dreamer. Vaxos's voice broke, splintering on the name like glass under a hammer. That's what did it. That's what finally shattered everything. His claws trembled, unsteady as he summoned the hollow record, the last fleeting moment of peace the galaxy would ever know. There it was, the research vessel Star Dreamer, a silver needle glinting against the endless black velvet of space. Mox-Saturn patrol ships closed in, their cold intent stark against the void. The transmission logs crackled to life. Mox-Saturn patrol, this is Star Dreamer. We're a civilian research vessel, studying quantum fields, the human captain said, his voice steady, professional, unshaken. You are in restricted space. Power down and prepare for inspection. There must be a mistake, the captain replied, urgency creeping in. We're well within the approved research corridor. We have children aboard, conducting their first deep space. Weapons fire cut him off. A scream of static. Silence. Vaxos let it hang, heavy and suffocating. 27 humans aboard, he whispered. 8 of them children. Children. Part of their young explorers program. Their bright eyes turned to the stars. All lost. And we. Can you believe it? We sat in these chambers, cloaked in our arrogance, and called it an unfortunate incident. Navigational error. How could we be so heartless? The hollow shifted, and the chamber gasped as Commander Blake Chin entered, not through the doors, no, but through the wall. An explosion rocked the room, debris scattering like ash, catching everyone off guard. Everyone except Ambassador Rodriguez, who stood like a statue, not even a flinch betraying her. You're out of order. Council President Xenotol shrieked, her mandibles clattering in panic. Guards, seize him. But Chun marched to the podium, his dress uniform pristine, untouched by the chaos, his presence a storm barely contained in human skin. The guards froze. Was it his eyes, burning with unspoken fury? The way he moved, like a predator unchained? Play the footage, he said, his voice low, cutting through the air without preamble, without the polish of diplomacy. You will leave this chamber immediately. Xenotol sputtered. Play the footage. Chen's command was a whip crack, and they obeyed. Oh, they obeyed. That moment, that voice, it tore through millions of years of civilization, awakening something ancient, something that remembered the terror of being prey. How could we not tremble? The security feed from the Star Dreamer's recreation deck filled the chamber's screens, and oh, the sight. Children, weightless in zero gravity, laughing as they floated, their small hands scribbling notes on crystal formations in microgravity. They traded jokes about the blandness of space food, their giggles echoing, their young voices weaving an old human song about a Major Tom, a dreamer lost among the stars. Then the first impact. The lights flickered, died. Terror swallowed their laughter. These children, Chen's voice could have frozen suns, each word a blade, were writing thank you notes to this council. Thanking you for letting them chase their dreams among the stars. And your patrol ships? They were powering up weapons. He held up a single paper note, fragile, handwritten, real. This is from Amy Chun, my daughter, 12 years old. Her last words, as your ships closed in. Thank you for letting us see the stars. The stars. Can you feel the weight of those words? The innocence we crushed. The silence in the chamber was crushing, a force with mass, with gravity, pulling every soul to their knees. You called this an unfortunate incident, Chun continued, each word landing like an asteroid, shattering our illusions. You said they shouldn't have been there, said their deaths were regrettable, but their own fault for being in restricted space. Their fault. He placed Amy's note on the podium, his gentleness a devastating contrast to his rage. Let me be clear, crystal clear. This note, these children, they were the last of humanity's patience. The final line. For years, you mocked our diplomacy as weakness, sneered at our restraint as fear, dismissed our patience as submission. That ends today, right now. The hollow captured Rodriguez rising, stepping to Chen's side, and oh, her face. That eternal diplomatic smile, the mask she'd worn through every insult, every slight. It was gone. Gone. The Human Federation doesn't just note this incident, she said, her voice a blade that made the room flinch. We remember. Oh, we remember. That session's recording spread like wildfire across the galaxy. 100 species watched, stunned, as humanity's patience ran dry. 100 species realized, all at once, they'd never seen humanity angry before. How could we have been so blind? We should have remembered Earth's oceans, Vaxos muttered to the recording crystal, his voice thick with regret. Their deepest predators, don't they move with such calm? Never rushing, never snapping at every passing target, never needing to prove their strength. They're patient because nothing hunts them, nothing dares threaten them, nothing challenges their dominion. He glanced at the emergency displays, his scales prickling as the human fleet drew closer, their presence a shadow over the chamber. We thought we were watching sheep, timid and stumbling among wolves. Sheep. Can you imagine our folly? We were watching dragons, pretending to be sheep, biding their time until we dared threaten their young. Their young. How could we not see the fire in their eyes? When the human ships began to move, Vaxos continued, another explosion blooming against the orbital shields, the council. Oh, the arrogance. Laughed. They called it a tantrum, a childish outburst. Counselor Nastel, with his smug sneer, said, and I quote, let them burn fuel showing off their outdated ships. Maybe it'll help them work through their emotional outburst. Emotional. The hollow feed showed the initial report. 300 human vessels, moving in perfect formation, their designs old, familiar, unthreatening. Nothing to trouble the council's military advisors. How wrong we were. Then Admiral Meera Patel's transmission hit. Every frequency, every channel, every device in council space. Her face, bronze skin glowing against her stark white uniform, filled every screen in the chamber. This is Fleet Admiral Meera Patel of the Human Federation Navy, she declared, her voice steady as steel. For 50 years, we've followed what we call the paperclip protocol, an old Earth saying. Show your enemies a paperclip, keep the nuclear weapons at home. She paused, letting the words sink in, and oh, how they sank. Every ship you've seen until today, deliberately outdated. Every weapon we've shown, intentionally basic. Every technology we've shared, carefully chosen to seem primitive. Did you really think we were that simple? The council chamber erupted in disbelief, a cacophony of denial, but Patel's voice sliced through like a plasma torch through butter. The Star Dreamer carried children, our children. They died writing thank you notes to their killers. We're done playing pretend. And then, oh, the shock. The outdated human ships changed. Vaxos still struggled to find words for it. They shimmered, like heat waves rippling over desert sand. And suddenly they were different. Larger, sleeker, bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist. The quantum shell disruption, Vaxos whispered to the crystal, his voice barely audible. That's what broke Nastel. Watching 300 supposedly primitive ships shed their camouflage like snakes sloughing skin. How could we not tremble? But it wasn't just the ships. Oh no, it was what they did next. The holo showed the Moxataran defense fleet, the pride of the Council's forces, moving to intercept 10,000 ships against 300. The chamber relaxed, smug in their numbers, certain of victory. Fools. Patel's voice returned, calm but unyielding. This demonstration will show 3 new technologies. Pay attention. There won't be a second showing. A single human ship fired. Not plasma, not laser, not anything we knew. Space itself seemed to hiccup, a stutter in reality. 20 Moxataran ships simply ceased to exist, their atoms gently persuaded to scatter. Localized space-time incursion weapons. Vaxos recited, his voice shaking. They'd had them for decades. Never showed them. Never even hinted. How could we have been so naive? The second demonstration followed, and oh, the horror. 3 human ships wielded what Patel called gravity sculpting. They crafted a gravitational lens that twisted an entire wing of the Moxataran fleet into what humans call modern art. Ships warped into impossible, grotesque shapes. Their crews mercifully killed instantly by the shear. But the third demonstration? That's when Nastel finally saw the truth Rodriguez and Chun had tried to warn us about. The humans could shut down quantum fields, Vaxos said, his scales rippling with dread. Not just drive fields or shields. Oh no, they could unravel the quantum coherence that holds matter together. The holo showed it. A single human ship, with a gentle nudge, turned 60 Moxataran vessels into cold, dissociated atomic soup. No bang, no flash, just a quiet suggestion to the universe that these atoms might prefer to drift apart. Nastel leapt to his feet, his ceremonial robes soaked with stressed sweat. Stop, he screamed. Please stop. Patel's face filled the screens again. Now you say please? Now you remember courtesy? Let me share something else we've been hiding. We have 30,000 more ships like these, waiting, watching, hoping we'd never need them. The chamber fell silent, the weight of her words crushing every delusion we'd clung to. How could we have underestimated them so completely? The Star Dreamer's children had been the spark, but humanity's response was a supernova. Their patience, their restraint, it had been a gift, a chance we squandered. And now, as their fleet closed in, we faced the dragons we'd mistaken for sheep. Their anger wasn't wild or reckless. It was precise, devastating, and oh, so patient no more. Counselor Nastel staggered to his feet, his ceremonial robes clinging to his scales, dark and heavy with the sweat of fear. Stop, he cried, his voice cracking with desperation. Please stop. Can you imagine the terror in that moment? Admiral Mira Patel's face flickered back onto every screen in the council chamber, her bronze skin stark against her white uniform, her eyes piercing through the chaos. Oh, now you say please, she said, her voice laced with a chilling calm. Now you remember courtesy? Let me share something we've kept hidden all this time. 30,000 more ships, just like these. They've been waiting, watching, for decades, praying we'd never need them. The chamber fell silent, a deadly quiet that pressed against every soul. How could we have been so blind? For 50 years, Patel continued, her words steady but searing. We smiled and nodded, playing the part of a primitive, eager species. We watched you strip away our rights, dismiss our claims, mock our diplomats. We swallowed our pride. Oh, we believed so fiercely that peaceful coexistence was worth the cost of our patience. Can you even fathom the strength it took to hold back? Another Moxataran squadron, bold or foolish, tried to flank the human fleet. They vanished in a blink, so fast it looked like a glitch in the holo feed. Gone. But you killed children. Patel's voice rose, each word a hammer blow to our arrogance. You killed them while they were thanking you, gazing at your stars with wonder and hope in their hearts. So now you get to see what humanity looks like when we stop being patient, when we stop playing nice, when we stop pretending to be less than we are. Nastel stumbled to the chamber's center, his claws trembling. The council acknowledges its errors, he pleaded. We'll make reparations, Restore all mining rights, trade routes, everything. Patel smiled. Oh, it was a mirror of Ambassador Rodriguez's diplomatic one, sharp and unyielding. Oh, we're well past that now, she said, her tone cutting like a blade. Now we're going to have a long, detailed discussion about reorganizing this council, about fair representation, about consequences for your actions. And you're going to sit quietly and listen. Why? Because humanity's patience, our restraint, that was the only thing shielding you from our power. Can you feel the weight of that truth? Vaxos switched off the holo, his hands shaking so violently he nearly dropped the controls. The battle, if you can even call it that, lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes, he whispered, his voice thick with disbelief. The political restructuring? That took 6 days. But the council's dignity? Oh, that might take centuries to recover, if it ever does. The defensive screens flickered, their light faltering as the human fleet drew closer, their presence a shadow over the chamber. We thought we were so clever, Vaxos said, his voice soft, heavy with regret. Thought we were manipulating a young, naive species. Did we ever stop to ask why a so-called primitive race could match our space travel? Why they seemed unbothered by our grand military displays? Why their endless patience felt so effortless? No, we never considered it might be the luxury of a species so powerful they could afford to wait. How could we have been so foolish? The new protocols. Oh, they were a lesson in themselves. Vaxos's claw brushed the data pad holding the Reformed Council Charter, its words a testament to humanity's resolve. They didn't demand vengeance, no? They demanded competence, accountability, transparency. Looking back, that was more terrifying than any revenge could have been. Why? Because it showed their strength wasn't just in their ships, but in their principles. The holo feed flickered to life, showing the first session of the Reformed Council. Ambassador Rodriguez presided, and oh, her diplomatic smile, once so patient, so composed, now bared teeth, a quiet promise of change. The Moxataran representatives? Nowhere to be seen. Vanished. Every council session now begins with a moment of silence for the Star Dreamer's children. A reminder, they say, of the price of arrogance, of the cost of mistaking patience for weakness. Can you hear the weight of that silence? Vaxos pulled up the new diplomatic guidelines, and oh, what a weapon they were. Humanity's most devastating yet. Every council decision must now pass the Star Dreamer test. Will this action protect the innocent? Does this policy serve the many, or just the privileged few? Would you want this choice etched into a child's thank you note? A child's note. The chamber's emergency lights shifted from red to amber, the human fleet holding position, waiting, always waiting. Their patience, even now, was a force of its own. We learned other things about humans too, Vaxos said, his voice trembling with awe. They'd been doctoring their historical records, minimizing their victories, playing up their setbacks, painting themselves as lucky survivors instead of the skilled conquerors they truly were. When we saw their real history, oh, stars above, Vaxos shuddered, his scales rippling. Let's just say their capacity for patience makes so much more sense now. How could we not have seen it? A small alert pinged, sharp and insistent. The Moxataran delegation had been found. They'd fled to the farthest edge of known space, probably thinking they could outrun humanity's reach. Fools. They found human ships waiting, ships that had been quietly stationed there for decades, silent, watchful, just in case. The humans have a saying, Vaxos continued, his voice steadying with the weight of realization. True power is the ability to destroy your enemy, but true civilization is choosing not to. Choosing. They chose, again and again, to be civilized, to be patient, to give us every chance to rise above our pettiness. Every chance. He straightened his robes one last time, the fabric heavy with the weight of his duty. The council survives, but it's changed, forever changed. Humanity holds no more power than their fair share, but their ships? They're still out there, watching. Their diplomats? They still smile those patient smiles. Their technology? It remains a mystery, and now we know that's by choice, not limitation. Can you grasp the magnitude of that? The defensive screens failed, their lights snuffed out like a candle in a storm. Through the chamber's crystal walls, Vaxos could see the human fleet taking position. Beautiful, terrible, patient. To future species who may join our galactic community, hear me, he urged, his voice rising with urgency. When you meet humanity, you'll see kindness, patience, a willingness to listen, to compromise, to bend. But never, never forget what lies behind that patience. It's a strength that could unmake stars. A transmission cut through every frequency. Admiral Patel's voice, still calm, still measured. Counselor Vaxos, this is your final evacuation notice. You have 10 minutes to finish your testimony and reach the safe zone. We'd regret postponing the council chamber's scheduled demolition. Vaxos let out a soft, bitter laugh. Even now, he marveled. Even as they prepare to tear down the very symbol of our arrogance, they give us time. They give us warning. They give us a chance to do things right. How do they hold such grace in their anger? He gathered his thoughts, his claws steadying as he prepared to close. The humans had joined the council's historical ethics committee, and their first act? A warning, carved into the foundation of every council building. Patience is not weakness. Restraint is not surrender. Those who can afford to be kind have already proven they can afford to be cruel. Cruel. The words sent a shiver through Vaxos' scales. A chime sounded, 5 minutes left. One final note for any species who finds this record, he said, his voice soft but firm. Humanity's patience wasn't infinite, but their capacity for forgiveness? Oh, it seems to be. They remember everything, every slight, every wrong, but they forgive most of it. They remain patient, eternally patient, with those who learn from their mistakes. But they never forget. Never. The 1-minute warning pierced the air, sharp and final. This is Senior Diplomat Vaxos. My final testimony concluded, he declared, his voice rising with conviction. And to the humans who will surely review this record, thank you. Thank you for your patience, your restraint, and above all, for giving us the chance to learn wisdom before you had to teach us fear. You could have crushed us, but you chose to teach us instead. Vaxos squared his shoulders, his scales glinting in the fading light, and walked toward the evacuation zone. Behind him, the council chambers awaited their meeting with humanity's patience, finally, irrevocably spent. Admiral Patel's voice began the countdown, polite to the end. Demolition in 10. Some swore later that as the chambers crumbled, they heard children's voices, singing an old space song about a Major Tom, a dreamer lost among the stars. But Vaxos knew. Oh, he knew. That was just humanity's patience, teaching one last, haunting lesson. A lesson we'd never forget.